And we are back with the Dictate the Game podcast, episode 8. Going to be a fun one today. We have a couple of people with us, of course, as always. Well, not as always, because you weren't here last week. The producer of the Dictate the Game podcast, Don Dom, is here.
Don Dom. Hello. Sorry, I was on holiday, but I'm back.
Mafia, Dom Don.
Yep, that's where I was. I was actually out in Italy, keeping up ties with the Italian mafia.
You got to do it, and you got to do it. And back from his 37-mile walk, is that what it was, guy?
Yeah, 37.
Yeah, he just went on a 37-mile walk, and he's on the podcast today. We have Mr. Moneyball himself, Guy. Good morning.
Hi, how you doing?
Speaking of, do you want to talk about the Moneyball, or do you want to talk about the walk first? Because your legs must be tired.
Yeah, to be honest, they're not as bad as I thought they would be this morning. It's more, I think I'm just more like mentally drained than physically. Not that
Before anything else, though, tell people what you were doing and why you were going on a 37-mile walk. It wasn't just because you decided, hey, I'm going to go for a walk today and went 37 miles.
Yeah, it's like a charity walk organized by, I live in Sheffield, so it's the University of Sheffield, and they do it every year. It's called the Big Walk during the summer, and it's just like a big walk in the Peak District National Park to raise money for different things. So last year it was for a scanner, which was like a MRI PET scanner, and this year it was for student scholarships at the university to try and give people like from more disadvantaged backgrounds a chance to come and study at university and that kind of thing. So yeah, just an excuse to raise a bit of money for charity and get out in the Peak District. And both times it's been really nice weather as well. It was really nice last year as well. So it's a nice day out, a good atmosphere.
How long does that take?
So we set off at 6:30, and I was aiming to finish around 7 or 8, but I tagged along with this group and they were going a bit slower than my pace, so I ended up finishing about 9 o'clock. So it was a long day.
It only took you 3.5 hours to finish it. Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's like 10 kilometers. You're running at 10 kilometers an hour. Yeah, not bad.
Well, they were the first person to finish. I think finished about 2 p.m.
Wow,
37.
that's fast.
So he like ran the whole thing because there was 2 routes. There was 37 and 23, and he caught up to the 23-mile runners. That's how fast he was running. So
wow,
yeah,
that's pretty fast.
Oh, do you take breaks, or do you just continuously walk for that many hours?
There was quite a few breaks. So they were sponsored by a local dairy in Sheffield. So that we stopped for some ice cream there. We had free ice cream, which was really nice.
I'm not gonna lie, my legs are just hurting hearing about
just
this.
thinking about it.
So I can't even begin to imagine what your legs feel like, because that must have been like obviously really rewarding, but you must be killing.
Yeah, no, it's a good day out. I think my legs aren't too bad. I'm really quite surprised that they're all right. Last year I got really badly sunburnt, and that was more painful than the actual walk. So
when are you going to go walking again? You going to go for another walk today? Just
no, God no.
Cool down walk. That's actually no. When you do marathons and stuff, despite after you do it, you're meant to do like an extra 2 weeks worth of running to like cool yourself down, so you don't just stop running.
Yeah.
But I don't think walking is kind of the same.
I don't know. I'm not leaving the house today. I'm just going to sit in the garden.
Chuck on Football Manager. I can see you're on it on Steam.
Yeah.
Just go on it. Oh, I'm pretty sure for anyone who hasn't got Football Manager, it's actually on sale in the summer Steam at the moment. So if you want to go and check it out, I think it's only about
I think it's like
13,
12 quid or something.
Yeah,
isn't it?
12, 13, 14 pounds or something like that. So if anyone hasn't got Football Manager, and also if you're thinking about maybe getting Football Manager 2020 and you're not sure about whether you want, it's £12.91 actually. And if you're not sure about getting Football Manager 2020, maybe get this one, have a play of it over the summer, see what you think, and then get it properly in 2020 in October, November.
Definitely worth getting if you're a student and you've just finished you're free for the summer or whatever, because you can plow a lot of hours into it if you're interested in.
Yep.
You can do touch on your walk if you wanted to.
Yeah, I should have done. Yeah, put it on my iPad or whatever, and yeah, that would have been good.
So Moneyball continues to be now. Dom, did you say that Moneyball is the most viewed? Moneyball's part 1, 2, and 3 are the most viewed website articles that dictate the game. At what time period?
So last month in May, Moneyball Part 1 came out and got like 9,000 views, I think it got. Okay. And in June, so just only Part 2 and 3 were released, Moneyball Part 1 still was in the top 3, along with Part 2 and 3. So clearly, obviously, when you released Part 2 and 3, everyone went back and checked Part 1 again. So it's, that's, how series work and things like that. So yeah, they've done fantastically well. And Guy said in our group chat, just before we released Part 3, he said, is everyone still kind of interested in Moneyball? Like, are you sure it's not gotten stale yet? And we went, see what happens. It'll be all right. And yeah, he's done fantastically well. So congrats, Guy.
You finally got to what I was really interested in Part 3 is your spreadsheet for the KPI. So I want to go through the entire article because people are really interested in it. So kind of walk us through, very briefly, if people haven't seen Part 1 or Part 2, what you're trying to do and where you've taken it now in Part 3.
So I'm trying to use the statistics that are available in FM to influence my signings rather than looking at sort of attributes, which is the main way that I used to, and I think most people do their sort of scouting. So it's a better look at sort of the information that's available rather than just basing everything on the attributes of each player individually. So I started out sort of, the first post was mainly just an overview of what I was going to be doing and like explaining the Moneyball principle and how I was going to try and implement it within FM. And then my second post was kind of the first few signings that I brought in based on the rules and kind of showing you their statistics and what have you. And then this third one that just came out recently was sort of an update on how they are settling in. Now I've just finished my first full season. So they've had January till May to sort of bed into the team and come in and see how they're doing, and they've done pretty well, to be fair. And also in this post I brought out the spreadsheet as well, which I've been using to sort of compare and analyze players and find out which ones are the most suitable for my team, kind of thing.
This would probably be a good time, if you're listening to the podcast, to go to the website at dictatethegame.com, download the spreadsheet, because we're going to go through. You can go ahead and pause. We're going to go through the spreadsheet just to kind of give people an idea how to use it, because it is one of those heady things. I mean, what you're studying for your master's in statistics?
Coming up September, I will be, yeah.
So it's a little bit, it's a little bit advanced for, a lot of people who aren't going to university for that. So go ahead and download it, and we're going to go through how you could actually use it if I'm going to use it as somebody who's not going to university for statistics, my master's degree. So go ahead and do that. And when you come back, we'll be able to kind of go through it. So going through and looking at it, I mean, to me, it looks like a big blank spreadsheet with a bunch of different KPI places to put your KPI in. So if I'm going to be using this, say, the way you used it in your save, how would I go about filling out this spreadsheet and then using it to be able to actually influence signings in the game as we're playing?
So it's got sort of 10 KPIs across the top. I suggest using KPI number 1 as appearances. That's what I've done, because then the way the spreadsheet works is it divides everything by the number of appearances. So the easiest way to do it is sort of to set up a shortlist for each role or position that you want to look at. So
you could do it by role too. So like if I had a roaming playmaker, I could do it by my role. So my one roaming playmaker position that I have in my tactic.
Yeah. So the way my tactic works is the fullbacks are doing exactly the same thing. The center and midfielders are doing exactly the same thing. The strikers are basically doing the same thing. Whereas if you had, I don't know, say a 4-4-2 where you had one more defensively minded midfielder and one more attacking minded central midfielder, then you're looking for different things from those two players. So you need to change your KPIs accordingly. Whereas mine are both sort of Carolero, so all I want them to do is just run about, win the ball back and pass it to a playmaker or whatever.
People that don't know, KPI is key performance indicator. So it would be the most important stats for what you think the most important stats for your individual role would be.
Once you've decided on sort of 10 of those, the easiest way to do it would be to create a shortlist for each position or role that you're looking at. And then for the headings, have like their name, appearances, and then 9 other KPIs that you're looking at. And then if you press Control and P, you can export that shortlist as a PDF or as a web page file. And then you can literally just copy and paste that into Excel, and then copy that into that area of the spreadsheet. Basically, that'll populate, and then the right hand side should sort of calculate where all of those players are in terms of ranking them against each other.
If you want to see Guy's spreadsheet, you can see actually the one he used for his Crystal Palace save along with the article right here in the comments of the YouTube video. So you'll see a download link there if you want to actually look at his spreadsheet to kind of get an idea of what's going on. But go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it'll rank all those players against each other, and then you can kind of get an idea of where players are better in what areas, kind of thing. So and then you can use that kind of ranking to sort of influence which player you want to look at. So say you're really interested in someone who can win the ball back, then you're going to be interested in sort of the tackle and stats, and maybe not so much looking at other KPIs. It's up to you, depending on what you want from each position. But that's the kind of way that I've been looking at it and comparing players against each other.
How has it worked out so far?
I think it's going to take probably another season to kind of get to grips with how people are doing. But the signing I made in the second post, Jamie Ortiz, he's been absolutely incredible. He's come in and scored sort of 8 goals, I think, in about 16 games, 4 assists. His stats are still way up there. And he on the surface of it, he doesn't look. You look at his attributes and they're not that impressive at all. But he's hit the ground running, and the stats are there to see. So yeah, he's been really impressive. The other guy I signed hasn't been too impressive, but yeah, it's interesting to see players doing well when the stats aren't necessarily there for them to actually be doing that well, kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at that player now, Jamie Ortiz, and he's got 11 finishing, 11 composure, and 14 off the ball, which are like the 3. If I'm signing a striker, those are my 3 like key stats I normally look for. But like he's averaging 12 across the ball as a 21-year-old. You know, that's abysmal in my opinion for a Premier League player. But if he's scoring 8 goals in 16 games, that's better than
a goal every other game. I mean,
yeah, that's really good.
You can't argue against that. Like, and he's got a really good record in terms of his entire history as well. He's played 151 games and scored 86 goals. So like, it's really interesting to see this kind of stuff happening. I think it is anyway.
It's also a bit weird because in a game that's so determined by numbers rather than random events, because it's, you know, a computer game.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see players like this do well despite how bad their attributes are, because obviously the way that things are calculated in this game is using the numbers that are the attributes of the player.
Yeah.
You know, the player is more likely to score with a higher finishing, and yet he still manages to score.
Yeah. And there's a few hidden attributes and stuff.
True.
But I can't imagine, unless he's just off the charts on the hidden attributes, which it could well be. But I mean, this is a way of sort of finding those hidden attributes, I guess, if you use the sort of Moneyball.
Well, it's also like, you know, a different way to be able to look at building a tactic when you think about it too. So, because I know, Dom, and we'll be talking about your article, you talk about building, you know, a tactic and training players around what you're going to do, kind of your DNA, your club. But it really is getting down to the nitty gritty of saying, okay, so I really want this person to do this in my tactic, not, you know, and overall this guy's great at finishing, but, you know, in this tactic, I want this person to do this, and I can see from their stats that they do this thing or one of these 10 things. So this is why I want to sign them, instead of just, in a lot of ways, blindly signing them on what the game says their attributes should be. But that's fluid in a different situation. It depends on the tactic you're using. It depends on the league you're in. It depends on who your partnership is. You know, when you're talking about a striker, if you're using 2 strikers. So really, it's a cool way to customize your team.
It is, yeah, and it's another way of playing the game as well, which I think the game can often get quite stale, especially when people have been playing it for like 20 odd years and kind of thing. So it's a new way of playing. It's a different way of playing. I think that's maybe why it's been so successful. It's just that it's something a bit different.
this time of year, especially. I mean, it's getting into the off season,
Yeah.
but so this is the kind of the slow season before the next version of the game comes out. So if you're really looking for a different way to play the game that I've never heard of, I mean, so you see people a bunch of different ways talking about how to play the game differently, and well, this tactic is really interesting because of this reason, and yada yada yada. This is actually playing the game a different way.
I think everyone kind of ends up playing the game kind of like this anyway, but this is a very numerical and rigorous way to play the game. It's like, everyone obviously is going to sign the player who scores a lot of goals per game and, gets good high average ratings. But this is actually taking it to the nth degree and saying, well, this guy passes more, he has more touches of the ball, he runs more. It just includes everything else. So I think it's very, like, a lot of people play it this way, but they never actually record it in the same way. And I think that's why this is good, because it's actually allows players to kind of go, oh, okay, I had a feeling this guy was good. Let's check his stats, and then he turns out you're like, oh yeah, he's really good. Let's sign him.
So how has it been for your team? You're playing as Crystal Palace in the Premier League. Where were you supposed to end up, and where did you actually end up?
We were predicted 19th, and we finished 15th in the end. So not too bad, but I wasn't too. I don't know. I guess I was kind of like ambivalent. It was like, oh well, okay, that's fine. The aim was to avoid relegation, and we did that. So I guess I was kind of pleased. I don't know. It would have been nice to see it do a bit better, but we're early on in the process. I've only signed 2 players, and there's a lot of sort of dead wood still left at the club, so I need to have a bit of a clear out, really. So hopefully that this sort of summer coming up, I'll be able to, like, I've still got like Sacco playing at centre back, and there's a lot of sort of players in there who are past it. So I need to kind of have a look inward as well as outward, look to which players aren't performing at the club, and also look at players who are performing away from the club, kind of thing, and then get rid of some and bring some in.
When is the next one coming out?
So it'll be about 3 weeks, I think, for the next one. So hopefully that'll sort of cover my summer transfer window and the players I've sort of brought in and got rid of, and then we'll look ahead for the next season, kind of thing.
I just want to say I really like the schedule we've got going at the moment. We actually had a couple of articles from a new writer of ours who's doing quite a lot of similarly statistical, and he's actually a lecturer from up in Birmingham. I don't know if I'm meant to plug this, but anyway, he's a psychology lecturer, and he obviously plays as a manager and does a lot of statistical analysis of things like whether decision making makes a difference, whether determination makes a difference, and he's doing it he's trying to control as many variables as he can, so it worked quite well. And yeah, the 3-week rota for articles is good because it gives you enough time to kind of exactly when you've got to do it, so you've got time to play the game and churn out seasons and things, and it's really good. I think 3 weeks is a good length.
It gives you a chance to be able to implement what you're hearing about at the website and on the podcast, and then you'll be able to play along, really. So, I mean, because a lot of people have been playing along, obviously, and you see with the interest in the Moneyball articles, people are playing along with it and looking for the next step. So that's going to be in 3 weeks, so we can look forward to that. DictateTheGame.com, by the way, we're talking about all the great stuff that we have on there. It's growing by leaps and bounds. If you want to check it out, www.dictatethegame.com. We have tactics, not only that, but we have different kinds of guides to be able to use your training better. We're going to be talking to Dom about that in a couple of minutes. And those really detailed statistical analysis of really how the game works. You can check it out at dictatethegame.com. We have new articles on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then we have the podcast every single Sunday. It's dictatethegame.com. And we were talking about using training a little bit in your tactics a little while ago, but Dom had a whole article this week on Friday about how to really bleed in your new signings or your youth signings and make them great players in your team. I kind of think of it as like the Dortmund method. Borussia Dortmund. Right?
Well, obviously, I'm playing as RB Leipzig, who are basically the evil team in the Bundesliga. I think they've actually got more fans from outside of the UK, more fans from outside of Germany than they do from inside of Germany. But
a lot of energy drink fans, a lot of fans of energy drinks.
Oh, actually, I don't even like energy drinks. I just really like some of their players, and I think they just play really nice football. It's a bit like Liverpool in that respect, because a lot of people don't like them, but they play really nice football. So I kind of can kind of see where they're coming from. But anyway, so 3 weeks ago I got a golden generation, which was absolutely incredible. And I'd already signed a couple of good youngsters, and I was bringing them through. And I thought, well, I'm still trying to wait a couple of years, because in Germany you can't play players in the Bundesliga unless they're over 17. So all the 15-year-olds I've got that are, wonder kids, they're just kind of sat in my under 19s at the moment, because they can't actually grow because they're not playing first team football. So I decided to try and bridge the gap and say, look, this is how I'm trying to go about, and how this is actually quite a good way to use the new training system, because I think next year the training system won't change very much, because they've already changed so much about it. Either they'll really revert back to how it used to be, or they'll keep it almost identical. And I just kind of wanted to look at how to use the training thing, because up until the golden generation, I didn't really touch it very much. I left it a lot to my assistant manager, and it ended up, I was fine. I was okay. I won a league. I got a Europa League final. I was fine. It was okay. But I've realised how much more you can do if you train players in a certain way. Great example of that is Van de Beek. I signed him end of last season, played him central midfield, and he played 30 games and got 1 goal or something like that. But this year, I've moved him to a cam. I trained his finishing, and he scored 4 goals in 6 games. So, it's really good to show how everything moves, and how you can see the difference you're making. If you're training someone in shooting and then they start scoring more goals, it's really rewarding to be like, oh, that was what I spotted and thought would work, and it did. It's really, really nice.
You would almost think that the computer would do that yourself, that your assistant manager, if they were good at training, if they were good at tactics, would do that themselves, but you realize that they really don't. And
no,
again, and like you would think, so you think if you're just leaving it to the assistant manager, that stuff is being taken care of.
In the first episode, which was called RB Leipzig's Golden Generation, there was a player in there called Endrit Berisha, who was a 17-year-old left back who I signed for 95 odd K. But he was 188 centimeters tall, and he had really good marking, 17 tackling for a 17-year-old, 18 determination, really good natural fitness, really good work rates and stuff like that. And Guy said to me, well, why don't you train him as a centre back? Because he's got really, really good stats in those areas. And the computer's like, why would you train this player as a centre back? This guy doesn't show any of the qualities. And then you change the highlighted attributes, and it's like, oh, he's got great stats. Why are they not suggesting that? So sometimes the AI is quite clever enough, is clever enough so that they can spot, how to retrain, let's say, a left winger as a left attack midfielder, or a cam as a striker or whatever. But sometimes it really struggles to spot that, this player's got some really, really good stats. 16 leadership. I mean, he's only 17, 12 positioning, 11 passing, 13 first touch. He looks like almost a ball-playing defender. But it didn't ever click that was a good idea to play him. And it's actually suggesting you play him as a no-nonsense fullback, as in no technical skill whatsoever, and just really good physicals. So it's interesting.
I wonder how much that would actually change from assistant manager to assistant manager if you're leaving it to them, because that's something I've always been curious about too. And I mean, I don't know how really there is to test it, to be able to say, like, how much do those assistant managers' attributes really affect what they do in the game?
I think it depends on how much freedom you give them. If you kind of say to your assistant manager, you can run training, you can find players, you can do squad reports, you can pick tactics and stuff, then they'll really basically become a manager. And they'll, obviously managers have very different ways to play the game, and all of their, obviously players have player preferred moves, but managers have the equivalent, which is like, sign young players for the first team, or don't play a goalkeeper on the bench, and they'll really start to implement those on the team. And they'll basically, if you take a back seat, they'll take a front seat and just take over and become basically, in essence, a manager. So I think your key background stuff is really important. I think you need to make sure you've got a really good assistant manager. I'm going to say my assistant manager is also my chief data analyst, because I'm not broke, but it's just lazy. And I always every time I go to a club, I always check the head of youth development or whoever's bringing through youngsters, because that is a crucial role, because that will really affect. That's one of the biggest effects of your quality of your youth players, in my opinion, is obvious. Other than obviously the training, like how good your training facilities are and how good your youth recruitments are, but whoever the head of youth development is will really make a difference on the players that come through. And if they've got similar like styles to you, it'll say like their preferred formations and their preferred mentalities and their pressing styles, things like that. If they've got similar things to you, then the players will have similar things to you. So that's why it's really important to have those players come through.
Well, how has it been working out for you? You've got a golden generation. You're not able to really play them yet. So how are you able to measure how well what you're talking about is working for them?
I mean, I can't really, if I'm being honest, because obviously I haven't really had enough time to do it. But you know,
you're seeing attribute changes and things like
yeah,
that. Are you seeing
definitely.
progression? Okay, yeah.
There's a picture of a guy called Jonas Bierman in the first article, and then there's also a picture of him in the second article, and it shows like the stats that have gone up. I can't obviously show this because we're in a podcast, but you know, he's definitely improved in quite a few key areas. I'm just looking now to see if he's improved much. Actually, he's got a lot of green arrows, but I can't see much changing. So maybe it isn't working. I don't know.
All right.
Oh, his stamina's gone up from 8 to 9. There you go.
Okay, that's great.
It
So
works.
So
it
yeah,
works.
so it definitely works. So are we going to say it doesn't work at all, or that it definitely works?
I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think that it'll work. It'll work.
You must decide. You must decide right now if it works at all or it doesn't work at all. If it works, it works. Okay, it works perfectly. There's no
100% success rate. 100%. It works every time. 60% of the time, it works every time.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, players will also, because of their different personalities and their different approaches to things, they'll always like respond differently to training. I feel like a lot of the youngsters, if you've got a real, you know, aggressive style of management and you're real like take no shit, then they're more likely to kind of listen to you when you're like, you need to train and do this. Whereas a lot of the older players who are a bit more, you know, showy offy and a bit more charismatic and a bit more, you know, I can do what I want, I think that'll be less easy to train. Like the Van der Beek situation, you know, he's quite a key player in my team and he's got some great stats and he's, you know, obviously doing very well, but he's like, oh, I don't need to learn to shoot. He says in the thing, he's been very unhappy with training lately and feels the individual training he's been assigned to work on is not producing any results. And it's like, you've just scored 4 goals in 6 games and tell me that's not a result. How can you ever question me again? But
I wonder if that's something that the game should look at then, because that does affect morale and it does affect, you know, how your player would necessarily play. So if a player in a realistic way is saying, you know, I'm not getting results, but they are.
Yeah.
You should be able to have some kind of conversation with them, or it just shouldn't happen. I mean, it should be obvious to them. Or if they're basically being a real prick, then you should be able to say, like, have a conversation with them about that, saying, listen, you know, you scored 4 goals in 6 games. Like, how could you say that this isn't working? Let's come to some kind of agreement here.
You'd think, eh? You'd think. He did score. Did he score a hat-trick? Yeah, he scored a hat-trick in a cup game. And they were all from outside the box. Like all 3 of the goals were almost identical. And it was all basically playing as like some sort of false 9, picked up the ball a bit further behind and just drilled it into the bottom corner and scored 3 goals like that. And I laughed and went, how has this worked so well, so quickly? And then, and that doesn't even include the 4 and 6 he scored in the league. That was just a cup game. So I don't understand why he's being such a little bitch. Like he's one of my best players. There's no way to address that.
But there's no way to address that.
Yeah. Unhappy with training. So
fine him 2 weeks' wages.
Yeah, shut up. You mug. He appreciates me as a manager, but he's probably scared of me. Scared shitless.
But for every, you know, player that you're going to have that's going to develop the way that you want them to develop, you're going to have like a Balotelli where they just got a bad attitude. You know, no matter what happens, they just have a bad attitude. You know, and you know, they'll still progress, but they're just not going to like it. And then you have to make a point that adds another dynamic to the game. You got to say, like, okay, so is this person's attitude bad enough where I need to get rid of him because it's poisoning the rest of the locker room, or so I guess I'm gonna have to take back what I said. It does add another level to the game because maybe they just have a piss poor attitude.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I actually managed to sign Jadon Sancho. Oh my god, I freaked out. I asked my board because he was transfer listed for like 80 million or whatever. I was like, I can't afford that. So I interacted with my board and said, "Oh guys, yeah, go on, sign Sancho, I dare you." And they went, "Yeah, all right, cool, yeah." And I went, "What?" Okay. And so I've started playing him, and he is nuts. He's actually insane. I won. To be fair, I've only really played him in like 3 or 4 games, but he's recently just turned up. I'm talking about, we played Monaco in the Champions League, and he scored 2 goals to win 3-1. We played Young Boys in the Champions League, and he scored 3 goals to win 4-0. So he's just like,
wow.
And we played Dortmund recently and beat him 3-0, and he got 2 assists, I believe, or something like that. Like, so he's playing really, really well at the moment.
See, I love Jadon Sancho in the game.
But the problem with that is that when my board negotiated the deal, they gave him a wage hike if he hit 5 international games, like a huge wage hike. And because he's obviously playing so well, he called up to all his England games, and he's already on his extra wage after like 4 months because he's already played that many internationals. It's like, what? I've just been stuck with this player with like a massive wage, and he's got a really low release clause as well. In January, I'm going to try and renegotiate that contract.
That brings up another question. Is there, a player in FM19 that you try to get? Saying money is no object, but that you try to get every single time that there's just a player that you love to play for a certain reason.
I haven't really had that this year. Last year I had a couple of players who I always got, which was because they always seem to become available. But Filip Krivinovic, like a central midfielder, and that Rodrigo Goes from Brazil as well. I used to sign him quite a lot on FM18, but this year I haven't really had anyone who I've signed every time and been like, "Oh, I need to get him in my team," kind of thing.
Whenever to be fair, I'm going to say for the last 4 or 5 Football Managers, Timo Horn has been an absolute rock in my teams. I always tend to sign him from FC Köln, and he is absolutely incredible. I've signed him for Feyenoord, I signed him for Brighton, I signed him for Leipzig, I've signed him for all sorts of teams, and he's always been an absolute unit in goal. Timo Horn, absolute gold of a man. Not quite Timo Werner, but we can get baby steps.
I was wondering who was going to come up as soon as I asked that question. I said, "Is he going to bring up Timo Werner?"
Oh, I have a love-hate relationship with that man currently.
Oh, wait a second! Whoa! Because last time we talked, it was full love.
Well, basically, the second after I recorded that podcast, he just started acting up for me. Didn't score in like 4 or 5 games, and I was like, "What is it?" And he missed a penalty in a shootout, which knocked me out of the semi-finals of the cup. So I was pretty mad at him. And then he got injured towards the end of the last season, but he still won the Golden Boot, and I was like, fine. And then this year, he's got 7 goals in 7 starts and 3 in internationals. So it's like, well, what are you playing at, man? But I think it's because people are now he's got teams that are interested in him. You've got Chelsea and PSG are both showing minor interest in him, so he's obviously started playing to show them.
You sound a little bit bitter that he won't be. He's not doing the same thing for you. Now he's doing it because Chelsea and PSG are looking at him.
Yep, I am very bitter, but hey,
you have a really up and down relationship with Timo.
Yeah, we're on first name basis. Yeah, Timo. Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually got anyone I can probably replace him with at this point, so I really don't want him to leave. But I love him, but I hate him. He's such a little minx. Oh dear. I hate him so much, but I love him. Yeah, so that's my Leipzig save. I'm currently 6 wins in 8, so I'm joint top of the league with Borussia Mönchengladbach. We're doing okay in the Champions League last year. Man City won the Champions League and beat Atletico Madrid in the final. No, I was hoping there would be like a German team or anything, or no, it's a bunch of English teams. Almost like it's realistic. How weird. But yeah,
it's almost like it's a realistic game.
Yeah, that was really funny actually, because I remember like in the last couple of years, it's always been predicted that like English teams will do well in the Champions League on Football Manager, and everyone's gone, oh, that's so unrealistic. They never seem to do well. And then this year, you've got 4 teams in the full final spots. So it's like, how ironic is that? Actually, in the first knockout round, there was 3 German teams. I lost to Arsenal on away goals. Leverkusen lost to Barcelona 7-0, and Bayern lost to Man City 5-3 on aggregate. So we didn't do very well. But hopefully next year we'll keep on. Bayern falling apart. I've just nabbed I've just nabbed Nagbury and Julian Weigl. Is that how you say his name?
All right, yeah. Weigl, yeah.
Weigl, yeah. He was transfer listed, so I picked him up for 27.5 million, considering they signed him from Dortmund for 41.5. So pretty happy with that. Playing quite well. But yeah, Bayern's have fallen apart.
That's interesting. You mentioned a couple of teams that are interesting to me in real life football right now is Barcelona and Manchester City. Manchester City with another great signing of Rodri from Atletico Madrid. I mean, so are they just going to continue to do what Barcelona did a few years ago and just be their strength to strength every single year?
I mean, they have enough players that if he doesn't work, they're not going to suffer. But if he does do well, then he will do very well in that team.
Is it just Pep? Is that what it is? I mean, everywhere this guy has gone, from Barcelona to another team you mentioned, Bayern Munich, to now Manchester City, he seems to have a way that if you could just bottle what he was doing as a manager, then it would give you success every single time. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's the argument that he's been to a lot of big clubs. He was playing. He started Barcelona when they just won a Champions League or something, and he went on to win a couple more. And he went to Bayern when they were at their peak, and they just won a Champions League, and he went on to win a couple more. And then he's gone to Man City. I know they didn't win another Champions League at Bayern, did he? But he did pretty well. Yeah. And then he's obviously come to Man City, and he's got basically the best team in the world. So it's like, well, you can't exactly go very wrong with that team. But he still seems to be doing very well and managing a lot of the big names and stuff. Because obviously, when you've got players like Riyad Mahrez, who are playing, 10 games a season, he'd want to be playing more. He's a player that would want to be playing week in, week out for a regular team. But he's happy to sit on the bench at Man City. Is that because of money? Or is that because he's so in awe of the way that things work and he wants to prove himself to Pep? So it's a bit of a different one. But yeah.
I think it's a different way of going about it because the way you talk about that is it's a method of success is being that good of a player's manager. Like Klopp is the same way. Klopp, I mean, it seems like every single player, no matter how much they play, love him. Like Geno Sturridge was playing very, very limited amount, and then he's transferring out, and he's talking about how much thanking Klopp and talking about how much he loves him. So. It's just, I guess the ability to do that is something pretty special. And it seems like Pep and Klopp do it in very, very different ways. I mean, Klopp looks like he's their best friend. I mean, legitimately, when they're interacting on the sidelines, after games, it legitimately looks like, I mean, they're hugging and they're talking and he's got something special to say to each player. And you just don't see that with Pep, but you get the same results.
Yeah. He's a fucking good guy, isn't he? Really, really good guy. Sorry, I'm just my brain is frazzled right now. It's so hot here. It's so nice.
Oh, is it really?
It's like 28, 29 degrees right now.
Yeah, crazy.
And it's like I'm in like the equivalent of a greenhouse in my room. It's because I'm on the top floor. It's in like this really small room, but there's a big window, so it's like it just heats up. It's lovely in here, but like sometimes I just genuinely can't think. I sat here and you just paused and I went, what? So sorry about that.
You sounded like Luke. Like you're actually like Luke was still on the podcast this week.
Oh wait, where is he? Where is he today?
I don't know what he's not doing. I don't know what he's doing. He said he couldn't come on today.
Why not?
He's just unavailable. He's a busy man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to be on this week, guys. It's like, oh, really? Okay. Well, no excuse, no reason why. Just no date this week, no holiday.
It might be a date. It's just he's not telling us anymore because we bullied him. Well, I mean, we made jokes about him. We don't bully him, obviously.
Of course, we don't bully him.
No, he loves.
There's no bullying that goes on in the podcast. You've never been bullied. I've never been bullied. It's never a.
Oh, I've never been bullied on the podcast. No. I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course not. Of course not. Well, you know what I think you should do to beat the heat though is take a 37-mile walk.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, I did that yesterday and it worked out really
Absolutely
well.
no chance. I'm going to the beach. I'm going to the beach this afternoon. I'm going to have a great day.
All right.
So
Well,
that'll be nice.
Since Luke is not here, I mean, I guess, guys, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm all right. Yeah.
Do we actually want to do a proper outro this week? I mean, I'm pushing the boat out here a little bit.
Yeah.
But once I think we did do an outro, which was like, oh, we'll talk to you next week, and we all just kind of went bye, and that was fine.
Okay, we can do that. Yeah. All right. So I think that'll do it for this week, boys. We got a lot of things going on this coming week. We have a Ben with a brand new article on Monday. We have a brand new writer, Sam, who's going to be having his debut article on this coming Wednesday, and hopefully we'll be able to get Sam on the podcast next week to be able to talk about his first debut article. But other than that, I hope everybody has a good week.
Bye.
Bye.